Hello, hope everyone's doing well. Glad to have another chance, another opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. I'm still, it's still strange to be able to to be doing that in this format. I'm much more comfortable actually standing in a classroom or sitting, in a circle having a discussion um, with fellow Christians than I am talking to the computer or talking to the camera. Um, but um, it's also a blessing that we have this capability to do this, and I can still share some thoughts with you. I'd like to talk in our time, my time right now about grace. Grace is something that is always on my mind, I think, more lately. And to me personally, I think it um, is the most important concept for me to grasp in my walk, uh, in my journey as a child of God. Understanding um, this idea of grace and what grace means and um, how it influences my relationship with God and my relationship with other people. To me, I think it's a journey of discovery that likely will never end. Um, but I wanted to share a few thoughts and a few passages along that journey with you today. I want to read Psalm chapter 86. So if you want to follow along, incline your ear, O Lord, and answer me, for I am poor and needy. Preserve my life, for I am godly. Save your servant, who trusts in you. You are my God. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for to you do I cry all the day. Gladden the soul of your servant, for to you, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. For you, O Lord, are good and forgiving, abounding in steadfast love to all who call upon you. Give ear, O Lord, to my prayer. Listen to my plea for grace. In the day of my trouble, I call upon you, for you answer me. I love reading the Psalms. This particular section um, I came upon because it it has the word grace in it, and I was looking for passages to talk about grace. Um, and um, this is a plea, a humble plea to God um, to provide grace. And I think one of the things that strikes me about this passage and um, in the Old Testament and how the psalmist called out to God for grace, and that um, I know personally um, I don't do that often, certainly not as often as I need it or require grace. Um, Now, I pray often for forgiveness, and I mean maybe I'm learning over time that they're not exactly the same. When I ask God to forgive me, um, when I know that I've done something wrong, um, and maybe what I should pray for is that I accept God's grace because His grace is there for me. It's provided. I don't have to ask for it. It's given already. It's available. Um, it's it's not something that um, God withholds and then He gives when we ask. or gives when we need. It's just there. It's always there. Um, so it's, grace, I'm beginning to learn more and more, is continually with me. It's an action that's always there. It has to be, because I mess up so often. I do so many things wrong, and not the way I should. The only way for me to um, stay in a relationship with God is that continual grace that is always present. The free and unmerited favor of God, as manifested in the salvation of sinners and the bestowal of blessing. Free and unmerited favor of God. For me, this concept, this idea, is still something that I continue to learn more and more what it means and how it impacts me, and how that meeting impacts the way I behave and the way I act, what I say. At least, I still say things I wish I shouldn't. Um, and maybe that's the point. As you understand grace, it's not that you get to a point where you stop doing that, because I don't think we ever get to that point. But each time you're reminded that, that mistake's not your final mistake. I think one of the reasons that I feel grace is so important, it's so important to me, is um, how much we constantly dwell on our mistakes, and how we think about our mistakes, and we can let our mistakes define us sometimes. Sometimes these are mistakes that others know about, and most often they're mistakes um, others don't know about. It's something um, that is either in our past from people we don't know, or in secret. Um, and this ability to um, forgive ourselves, to realize that our mistakes haven't um, doomed us, um, is so important for us to realize, for ourselves to realize that grace covers us. And until we realize that fully within ourselves, sometimes we're not able to fully offer that to someone else either. Um, so I think it's very important, because we're so hard on ourselves to do things right, to do what's expected, um, to always be act a certain way, to always say a certain thing. There's a lot of pressure, and uh, pressure to do something that I'm not sure we're capable of doing. Certainly, um, as 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 broken humans. Um, Not to say that we don't strive, we don't attempt, we don't improve and correct ourselves. Um, but we can put such a burden of guilt and grief on ourselves that it can smother us. And the more we learn about grace, the more we understand um, what God has given us, and how His sacrifice puts us in His presence, and not because of what we do, but because of what it is. Um, that is so very powerful. You may have noticed the video loop that I put in. Um, I mean, this is video I took when we were last um, out in California, and I was watching the video and it didn't immediately strike me to use that sequence in this talk, but as I thought about it, it made a lot of sense, right? You see him. I, I, I mean, I edited the video and made it loop to show him falling over and over and over and over during the entire talk. And while you may not have heard a word I said because of that video looping, the intent is to illustrate no matter how many times we fall, grace is there to help us up and to get us back up and trying again, no matter how many times it happens, no matter how many times we fall short. God's love is still there and God's grace is still there. I'd like to end by reading Ephesians chapter 2, 1 through 10. Walter mentioned this in his lesson on Sunday, and I was preparing for this class, and I had this verse in mind, and I just want to read it again. I think it's a good way to end the talk. And you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind. But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved, and raised us up with him, and seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, so that in the coming ages he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace and kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. For by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. Thanks for your time, and may the grace of God continue to surround you and comfort you. Thanks.